Hello and welcome to the movie show. My name is Tyler Calkins and today we're going to be doing a review for Gemini Man. This is going to be a spoiler review, so if you don't like spoilers, go out, watch the movie, come back, we'll talk about it then. Let's dive in, and if you've seen the trailers, then good for you. You've seen probably the first hour of this movie, and not so good for Paramount's marketing team. Maybe it has something to do with what Ang Lee filmed, but ultimately there's not a lot going on with this movie. I heard that the pre-production process took like 15 years, or was in gestation a long time at Paramount. It feels all a little dated, essentially. Will Smith is playing an assassin called Henry Brogan, and he's ready to retire, but the government's concerned that he's going to go rogue, so they send in assassins to kill him. What I found funny is clearly early on in the movie, you can tell that Will Smith is a very talented assassin, so they send in these assassins to kill him, and I thought, why would you ever break into Will Smith's house? That is a terrible idea for you, considering the fact that clearly he's an assassin who's probably going to kill you, and guess what? He does. He kills all of them, because he's totally badass in this movie. Beyond Will Smith retiring, they used his DNA to create a clone of him, and now they're sending that young clone in to kill him. And if that sounds a little dated to you, it sounded a little dated to me, and it was. Eventually, old Will Smith, Henry Brogan, tells young Will Smith Jr. about who he really is. Tells him about, I'm you, you're a clone. It's not all bad. Dion Beebe's cinematography is really good. Well, there's some really beautiful shots of Budapest, Cartagena, and Glenville, Georgia, and obviously Ang Lee, knows how to direct the scene. I'm looking at Crouching Tiger, I'm looking at Brokeback Mountain, so he knows how to direct a movie, and direct a scene. I felt like maybe the story was a little blah, or there just wasn't a lot to do here. Funny story, when Crash won Best Picture, I was actually rooting for it, and at the time I didn't really realize what a controversy it was, and now in hindsight, I really wish Brokeback Mountain would have won, because obviously it's a better film and it would have been more relevant. Times change. Back to Gemini Man, or Gemini Man if you will, as seasoned Will Smith, Henry Brogan, takes on rookie Will Smith Jr. in the tale of two Will Smiths, if you will. Let's start with Junior Will Smith, and anytime he was on screen on his own, he really shined. He played the role with this submissiveness that Will Smith very rarely shows in films that I've seen. And not that he hasn't, but just, he very rarely shows it. And he has this emotional scene with his father, Clay, played by Clive Owen, and that's about all there is to Clive Owen. He's really not much in this movie. He's underwritten, he's really by the numbers. Again, this movie feels really dated. He does have one good line when the government tries to assassinate Will Smith that I talked about earlier, and they botch it completely. And then he goes to the person running that thing and he goes, "It was like watching the Hindenburg hit the Titanic." And that was a funny line. But other than that, he has nothing going on. He's a very boring, underwritten villain and ultimately very forgettable. Not his fault, but it is what it is. Anyway, Clay says to Junior, "You have to kill Henry to get through your darkness," right? Trying to manipulate him as usual. And Junior replies, "Maybe you're my darkness," because now he's questioning everything he knows, because basically he's finding out he's a clone and is questioning everything about his reality. I know it was supposed to get me sad because Will Smith's performance was incredibly emotional. It didn't get me there. I don't know. I can't speak for others, obviously. I think it will get maybe some people there. But I think Will Smith deserves a lot of credit for the emotion he put into the performance, because you can clearly see it within the scene, and it's really good stuff from his it's good work from him. And the reason I said earlier on that Junior Will Smith was good on his own when he's on screen is that anytime him and Will Smith were him and older Will Smith, Henry Brogan, were on screen together, it looked weird. It had this weird CG kind of effect that just didn't work for me. So ultimately, anytime they were on screen together, it was bad. But anytime he was on his own, it was not only was the CG really good, but it seemed like just the whole thing was better. I don't know why it seemed like younger Will Smith was more elevated. One place where it was particularly bad was towards the end of the movie, where Henry goes to see Junior and he's going to college and living his life normally instead of being a clone. And well, he's still a clone, but he's trying to live his life like a normal human at that point. And the CG in that scene is really, really bad. And I don't know why it's so bad, but it was really bad in that scene. And I really hope Netflix is paying attention to this, because I was like, oh, Irishman's coming out here soon, and I really hope that they're not going to run into a problem like this with that movie, and it already looks like it is, so I hope they're cleaning it up. De-aging technologies, it's getting good, but you got to be careful. Marvel seems to be honestly the best ones with it right now. Then there's, we talked about younger Will Smith. Let's talk about older Will Smith. And his performance, it was a little more muted. It seemed like it was a little tired. I don't know if he was going for that, but it seemed like it was missing something. It needed a little bit more. He did have a good scene with his younger self where Henry Bogan says to Junior, kid, I know you inside out and backwards. And he starts going through all his attributes and starts running them up and down. And Junior still isn't paying attention. And Will Smith lets out his usual, like, Will Smith style yell. And he goes, look at me. And he's like, pay attention to what I'm trying to tell you. And he continues to run up and down him and just really like break down the brick walls that this kid has around himself to be like, I know you, I can connect with you. Which is really, I think, some of the themes of this movie was really trying to get across. It didn't hit me in those ways emotionally, but I know that it was trying to get that across. Ultimately, this causes them to get into a scrum in the catacombs, and that was one of my more favorite scenes within the movie, just because I thought it was like a cool kind of setting. A bunch of skulls and crossbones, and like they would hit them, and then like they would get, they would break down and get dusty. So like I thought that was really cool stuff. Will Smith shares a great scene with himself in the film, oddly enough, in the beginning of the third act, and he and Junior join forces after Junior learns that he's a clone, and he learns that Clay's really not giving him any better advice, and Clay's really not good news. And he's riding in the car, and Junior asks, Henry to tell me about my mother, because he's taking like ownership as like a human at that point. He says, tell me about my mother, and he has this longingness on his face. And it's some of my favorite acting within the movie from Will Smith, and it really is still coming through, even though there's that, de-aging technology, but it's really some of the emotional stuff, because you see such a longing in his face. Henry tries to tell Junior all of his life story so he can kind of almost have that connection and have like his own life that he, deserved to have. And Henry continues on, and he's telling him his life story, and the whole point of it is that Henry's trying to tell Junior, basically get out of the game, stop and get out of the game, and don't, do this anymore. And Junior says to Henry, well, what am I supposed to do, be a doctor? And Henry goes, no, you're supposed to be, a father, a husband. Basically you're supposed to live a real life and not be tied down to your job, I guess, is some of the, bigger theme there. But he's an assassin in this instance, and, basically don't be a killer because I can't look at myself in the mirror was a line that he said earlier in the movie too. And he's trying to say, don't live this life because you're going to regret it later. That to me was really some of the emotional, like, acting heights and some of the better scenes within the film to me. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is the MVP of this movie. She's delightful, she's charming, and she's surprisingly badass. She plays a spy who's doing surveillance on Henry Brogan, only to be caught as someone doing surveillance on him by him. He catches her later. And they have dinner, they go their separate ways, and he goes after he has his own assassination attempt at his house, he goes to check on her either to see if she was a part of it or, if she's about to become, assassinated herself, and he finds out, she wasn't a part of it, they're probably coming to get her now too. They realize there's people getting ready to break into her house, so he goes outside to kill anybody outside, and she got someone who comes in to come and get her, and they fight, and he says this line to her, and he goes, you're going to tell me where Henry is now, or you're going to tell me in 5 minutes without your teeth. And they scrum it out a little bit more, and he roughs her up, and then she gets on top of him and ends up pinning him down, and she repeats that same line back to him. But it doesn't show her knocking out his teeth, and I was a little bummed about it because I was like, oh man, I thought we were going to get that. And then a couple moments later, Henry Brogan, Will Smith, comes back on the screen, and they meet out in the front of the house, and he says, did you kill that guy? And she goes, yeah, I did. And he goes, how do you know that it was him? And she drops his teeth into Will Smith's hand, very like Michael Myers style, and it was really kind of a badass kind of moment. So I thought she was great in the movie. Also later in the movie, her and Henry have this amazing partnership where they're fighting in the streets, trying to get away from Clay's assassins trying to get them. And she gets shot and she goes down, and he's dragging her by her collar, and she still kind of turns and picks her gun up, and she's still shooting at people, and she's really just such a badass in this movie. And it got me really excited for Birds of Prey coming out in February. I'm excited to see her as Huntress. I think now I'm even more excited given what she did in this movie. So that's something that I really took as a positive from this movie. Maybe not the movie itself overall was good, but she was good. Benedict Wong is in this movie, and he plays a friend of Henry's called Baron. And, he's charming in this movie. He's fine. But he's not nearly as funny or as entertaining as he is in his MCU appearances. So that doesn't, it didn't work for me as much there. The thing that caused this movie to suffer for me is the fact that it didn't really have any twists from what I saw from the trailers. Yes, there was a little bit of a twist where Henry ended up joining forces with Junior, later on in the movie, and then also where Clay was Junior's father. So, there was some twist, but there was a bigger twist in the movie later on where, they kind of foreshadowed to it where Clay was talking about making some enhanced humans, and this dude is like parkouring in really fast. You can tell he's an enhanced human to go and fight Henry and Junior and Danny, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, together. And he's beating the crap out of Junior and Henry, and he's beating the crap out of them, and they finally beat back this, parkour guy, this badass super enhanced soldier guy, who Mary Elizabeth Winstead was also helping them out, kind of shooting them, good marksmanship, kind of backing them up as always being a badass in the movie. And ultimately, they get him backed up, they basically kill him or incapacitate him, and they pull off his mask, and you see, plot twist, it's a younger Junior. And I thought, oh, it's so dated. I just thought it's really. I didn't like it as much. I just didn't. I would have almost preferred if it was Clive Owen, Clay's character underneath that mask, and he had cloned himself because he thought, Junior would not be strong enough to do what he needed him to do, or I mean, maybe it works to some level, but it didn't work for me. Ultimately, I say go see this if you're a Will Smith fan, or if you need something to do on a date night. It's not the worst movie I've ever seen, but I've seen it once and I don't need to see it again. That's my review of Gemini Man. What did you think of the movie? What were some of your favorite parts or not favorite parts? Are you excited about Mary Elizabeth Winstead like I am? Comment down below. I would love to hear what your thoughts are. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notifications button so you don't miss any of my new content. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.